the Trenches, Kroll's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. My name is Laurie Iacono. I'm an associate managing director on our cyber threat intel team. And this week I'm joined by two of my awesome colleagues, Mikesh Nagar and Ryan Hicks. Today is September 3rd, 2024, and we're going to cover the most recent trends that our team is witnessing in the trenches. Before we get into some of our deeper dives that we'll talk about, a lot of situational awareness that we have to present this week. There's been quite a lot going on in relation to cyber. So the first one that I'm going to talk about, this is related to the arrest of Telegram CEO Pavel Durov. He was arrested in France in August 24th. And he was accused of being complicit in fraud, drug trafficking, terrorism, and other crimes that have been committed through the Telegram platform. As many of you know who follow our reports, we have observed threat actors using that particular platform to commit fraud, as well as offering malware and phishing as a service products, including the malware that we're going to talk about later in today's briefing, XWORM. So we are definitely watching to see if this arrest has any impact on content that we see shared on that platform. The next one I had for SITREP was related to a 0-day in the Chrome internet browser was recently patched. This was a vulnerability in Chrome that threat actors were actively exploiting, and it was one that could cause users to experience the dreaded blue screen of death, as they call it. So this was patched recently. Now, if you're a Chrome user, Chrome typically updates automatically, but we are recommending that users of other Chromium-based browsers, such as Brave, Edge, or Arc, also update their browsers as available. Next, we have been reporting in the last few weeks about some vulnerabilities in Windows. And there was a proof of concept that was released for one of them. This was for the TCP IP Windows vulnerability that's tracked as CVE 2024-38063. And last week, a GitHub user published a proof of concept for this on GitHub. Now, it's kind of interesting here because the POC author actually stated that the POC works inconsistently and does require a specific configuration to actually work, but we're still recommending that orgs, apply the appropriate Microsoft patches to avoid compromise by this one, because as time and time has shown us again, even though we have one threat actor maybe coming out with a rudimentary POC for this, it's very likely that another threat actor can take that one and refine it to have a more effective one. And then finally, for situational awareness, I want to talk a little bit about some geopolitical activity that we've been seeing. In the last week, 3 different organizations published reports on cyber threats that they're attributing to Iranian state actors. The United States CISA released an advisory warning that actors related to the Iranian government have worked as initial access brokers to enable ransomware attacks since about 2017. And if you've joined any of the Kroll quarterly threat landscape reports, we talk quite a bit about how initial access brokers are a very prominent part of the ransomware ecosphere. So this was a very interesting report. Also, Google published an article on an Iranian counterintelligence operation with the goal of collecting data on Iranians who might be looking to cooperate with foreign authorities. And Microsoft published another article on a new malware dubbed Tickler, which is attributed to Iran. And this one was observed over the summer of 2024, gathering intelligence on sectors such as the satellites, telecommunications, oil and gas, and the government. So we're definitely watching this geopolitical activity that's happening right now. So I want to get into the briefing. As I said, we have a couple of topics that we're going to go into a little deeper dive on. And the first one is, Mikesh, I know you're going to talk to us a little bit about vulnerability in the SonicWall firewall.
Thank you, Laurie. Hi, everybody. So SonicWall has recently rolled out a security update to address a critical vulnerability when its firewall system, which could potentially allow unauthorized access if exploited by threat actors. The vulnerability being tracked as CVE 2024-40766 has a CVSS score of 9.3. It has been classified as critical, and the vulnerability lies within the improper access control implementation that is baked in. Now, the vulnerability affects Sonic Firewalls Gen 5 and Gen 6, as well as Gen 7, operating on Sonic OS version 7.0.1-5035 or earlier. SonicWall have addressed the vulnerability in the following firmware versions, which is Soho for Gen 5 firewalls, which is 5.9.2.14-30, and for Gen 6 firewalls, it is 6.5.2.8-2n. And what we do recommend is all users to download and patch to the latest versions available for the firewalls to ensure that threat actors do not attempt to exploit the vulnerability. At this moment in time, we haven't seen any POCs in the wild. However, threat actors are very quick to exploit vulnerabilities, especially when it is with firewalls. That's all from me regarding the SonicWall firewall vulnerability. Over to you, Laurie.
Thanks, Mukesh. So if you're keeping track, that's the third vulnerability that we've talked about in this briefing that we're recommending that people patch. So we have Windows, Chrome browser, as well as SonicWall. So keeping those patching teams really busy. The next one we wanted to talk about, like I said, this actually ties in to some of the activity that we were talking about on Telegram earlier. So Ryan, what can you tell us about what you've seen with XWORM malware?
Thanks, Laurie. Hi, everyone. So yeah, looking at XWORM this week. Firstly, really look at the top there, at kind of the last scene in the world as August. One note there, really, to start off with is we're continually ingesting new XWORM indicators of compromise daily. So just kind of initially displaying how active XWORM is, which is why we're kind of highlighting it now. So really, last scene in the wild is continuously kind of changing to every day. Really, this is being seen. So XWORM is a .NET based remote access Trojan seen sold on underground forums as malware as a service. There are also cracked versions of XWORM that have appeared both in the underground and on GitHub for free. It's developed by an actor calling themselves Evil Coder, and really first came into the market in July 2022, and since then it's received a number of updates and has been steadily kind of growing its user base and adopted by a lot more actors. And because it's a malware as a service, infrastructure tracking can be quite challenging, as each sort of different threat actor that kind of adopts it and gets access can deploy and develop their own infrastructure and delivery mechanisms. So there's quite a wide range of delivery mechanisms and ways it can be distributed, as sort of shown at the top there. And the amount of IOCs that we are ingesting, as I mentioned before, is kind of indicative of the scale we're looking at there. We've also observed high volumes of chatter within underground forums and Telegram channels in relation to XWORM. So all in all, kind of an increasingly popular tool. In terms of sort of the TTP context surrounding XWORM, much like other sort of commodity malware strains, it operates plugins to support the goals of whoever is kind of adopting it. So it can be used for kind of info stealing, loader, your kind of traditional remote access plugins, and these can all kind of be defined during the setup and configuration to cause it to behave in different ways depending on the threat actor's kind of purpose. And you see there's a few kind of features and capabilities that XWORM has available. In terms of initial access, as I said, it's quite widespread depending on who's kind of picked up the tool. It's kind of most commonly associated with kind of email spam, phishing, and social engineering, and to convince the users to download a malicious LNK or .url. So that's kind of the most common method that we've seen. And these tend to use WebDAV shares to host a second stage payload, which then installs the XWORM malware. For command and control, that's where the Telegram comes in, which Laurie mentioned. It uses both Telegram and ngrok services for C2, with the actors controlling that. And recently, XWORM was also involved, or observed, sorry, using a Try Cloudflare service, and that enables attackers to create a dedicated tunnel using the Cloudflare service without needing to make an account. I've also seen compromised WordPress sites used as a C2 as well, most recently in May this year. And lastly, for persistence, it uses scheduled tasks to kind of create the persistence. And then from there, depending on the plugins that's been sort of configured, the capabilities I mentioned on the previous slide are then kind of available to the adversary depending on the plugins that they've chosen. So for detections, mitigations wise, really it's kind of surrounding the network traffic mainly. So considering blocking connections to the Telegram API, also ngrok and Try Cloudflare services. If they're not used in your environment, of course, it depends on if they are legitimately used. It may not be possible to outright block them. If that's the case, if blocking is unavailable, consider kind of alerting for or threat hunting for traffic to these domains, just to identify any kind of suspicious or malicious activity to those particular domains, because it could be that XWORM is kind of hiding amongst kind of legitimate traffic if you're using those domains. That's all for me. I'll hand back to you, Laurie.
Thanks, Ryan. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in to our briefing. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to our team at, you can reach us at cti@kroll.com. And we'll expect to see you again next week, and hopefully people will tune back in for more threat intel from in the trenches. Until then, stay safe in cyberspace. Thank you.